Hello everyone and welcome to what could be the most exciting game in the FIDE World Cup 2019 so far. It's the second game of their match, Teimour Radjabov versus Maxime Vachier Lagrave, and thank you for, correcting me in the comment section saying that it's not Teimour, it's actually Teimour. So sorry about that. I really had no idea, always called him Teimour, but I'm always happy to learn new things. So Teimour Radjabov versus Maxime Vachier Lagrave. Their first game ended in a draw. Now Radjabov has the white pieces, and it's just a very nice game. So we do have a photo of it. Here it is. So let's just enjoy that for a moment. Not very centered, but there you have it. Still no eye contact, but I guess we have yet to see a handshake featuring an eye contact. So that being said, let's check out the game. Radjabov with the white pieces opens with knight to f3. The reti opening with knight to f6 by Maxime, c4 and c5. So symmetrical with knight to c3 and d5 striking in the center. We have c captures, knight captures, and now e3. Knight captures on c3 and d captures on c3, offering this queen trade. And even though you will prevent white from castling, it's that doesn't really do anything for black. So queen to c7, it's a line Maxime usually plays. He played it several times. He played it against Peter Svidler in the Granky Chess Classic. He played it against Wesley So in Norway Chess and also in Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire Blitz tournament. But he never actually scored a point with it. He drew 2 games and he lost 1 game to Wesley So. But okay, with e4, continuing in this line with e6, and now in all of those games that we mentioned against Svidler and against Wesley So, bishop to e3 was played, but here Radjabov goes for bishop to d3. It's a new move, and well, it has never been played before, or as we usually say, it is as of this move we have a completely new game. So after this bishop to d3, we have bishop to e7. Maxime prepares the castle. Queen to e2, developing, and now bishop to d7. This bishop is now coming to c6 to go over to this diagonal. With castles by Radjabov, castles by Maxime, and now e5, freeing this bishop, not allowing black to push e5 himself, which would, severely cripple the influence of this bishop, whereas now by having this diagonal open, it's really a powerful piece. Bishop to c6 by black, and now knight to g5, already with a threat of just capturing on h7, and if black doesn't really do anything about it, black can give up the dark square bishop, but giving up your bishop pair too early in the game isn't something that, well, most players would recommend. And if black does nothing, just prevents it, then also you can start with f4 and improving your position. So here, of course, h6, pushing the knight back, and here Radjabov took some time and he found a very nice idea. It's just a small improvement in the position, which turns out to be a huge improvement in the position. He plays bishop to h7 check. Seemingly a useless move, but not really. With king back to h8, and now retreating with the bishop, but not to d3, but rather to c2, which leaves the d3 square open for the white queen, with the threat, of course, queen to h7 checkmate. And you cannot capture the knight. If you capture the knight, you get queen to h5 with check, king goes here, and then queen to h7 is checkmate. On the other hand, after bishop to c2, you could go bishop captures on g5. Then comes the bishop captures on g5. You still can't capture due to the same mating idea, but then you could go knight to d7, and this is possible for black. For example, queen d3, you threaten mate. Now black has f5 to defend. And now if e captures on f5, now you play knight captures on f6, defending the h7 square with the knight. And if bishop captures, g captures, and again now the queen defends the h7 square. But it's a very tricky line, and it opens up the black position a bit too much. So here Maxime finds c4, simply not allowing this queen to d3 move. And of course, if you capture the pawn, then you lose the knight. There is no queen to h5 check. So here again, Radjabov took some time and he played rook to e1. It's the strongest move in the position, and it's a really hard move to find, defending that e5 pawn, so the white queen can move. And he finds a very nice continuation with queen to d8, going after the knight on g5, and now knight to h3. Also, the queen is preparing queen to d5 to go after queen to g2 checkmate, but it's not a problem. Radjabov has everything prepared with queen to d5, threatening mate on g2, and now comes the knight to f4, pushing the queen back and guarding the g2 pawn. We have queen to c5 by Maxime, And now as, the e4 square is covered by the bishop, the d3 square is covered by the pawn, and you really want to threaten mate, here bishop to b1, now making room for the queen on c2 to go after queen to h7. We have bishop to g5 now, threatening the knight on f4, and now comes, now you wouldn't really gain all that much by going queen to c2 right away. Black can easily defend, just go g6, but what you can do is play b4. It's the strongest move in the position, but it's an extremely hard move to find. Radjabov did not play b4, he played a much more interesting move. Here, if you move the queen, white will just pick up the c4 pawn, and then he's free to roam around with the queen, threaten all sorts of stuff. Point is, if you capture on b3, then first you play queen to d3 with the threat of mate, and once g6 is played, preventing checkmate, then you go a captures on b3, and now white's position is just excellent. There's already a threat of bishop to a3, just straight out winning material. And, there are also sorts of sacrifices possible. Maybe knight captures on g6 is possible. Maybe knight captures on e6 is possible. It would just be an overwhelming position for white. But Radjabov doesn't wait. He goes for knight captures on e6 right away. So the queen is under attack, the rook is under attack. If you don't capture it, you can just resign. So you could try queen d5, but it doesn't work. Queen d5 is interesting. Attacking the knight and also threatening checkmate seems like it's a free knight, but it's not due to f4. Now the queen prevents mate, and also the bishop here is under attack. And if you move the bishop, then you get knight c7. Again, the g2 pawn is protected, the queen is under attack, this rook is now under attack, and white will just be much better. So here, Maxime doesn't really calculate all that much, he just captures the knight, and now we have bishop captures on g5. Again, you cannot capture due to, a similar mating idea. For example, captures check, king g8, and now this important bishop h7 check, you can't run away, the queen covers f7, and then it's just king h8, bishop g6 check, king here, and now when the bishop covers this square, the queen delivers mate. So after this bishop to g5, we have queen to d5, offering, not offering, threatening checkmate. You don't really offer a checkmate. And here Teimour had to choose. Teimour. Teimour had to choose whether to go queen to g4 or f4. Both moves defend checkmate on g2, and what are you going to play here? f4 is interesting, but after f4 we would probably see this endgame, which it is better for white. For example, queen captures, bishop captures, king captures, and now bishop to not right away, but first bishop to e7, just going after the rook. And only after the rook moves, you would force the rook to capture the bishop away from the f4 pawn. Now king captures, rook captures, and bishop to g6, we would have this endgame where the material on the board is equal, but white is better. Teimour doesn't like this. He goes queen to g4 instead. Now, white could, Maxime could go for the same trade here. For example, captures. We would see captures. Now bishop to e7 once again. Rook f7 captures. Rook captures and bishop to g6. Difference being this pawn is now on f2 instead of on f4. But now it's actually Maxime who doesn't like this. It's Maxime who prefers the queens on the board. He likes his pressure as well. So knight to d7. Now threatening knight captures on e5, which would win a pawn. But Teimour is not easily scared away. He goes bishop to e4, attacks the black queen, and allows knight captures on e5. Maxime captures it. And now Teimour has to choose whether he wants to go queen h3, queen to g3, or queen to h5. All three moves are interesting, and now it's again Maxime to move. His queen is under attack. What do you do here? Here, black has two good moves. Maxime played one of them. He played queen to b5. He got the queen away from, the threat of the bishop. But there was also an interesting line, knight to f3 check, which opens up the attack towards the bishop on g5. For example, bishop captures. Now you trade queens, captures, and after h captures on g5, we would see bishop captures on c6. B captures, and now rook captures on e6. It's a really bad endgame for Maxime. Radjabov would be up a pawn, but most likely, very quickly, you would lose these double C pawns. So Maxime avoids the trade with queen to b5, and now comes bishop captures on h6. This was always lurking around, but there was never time to do it. So of course you cannot capture it, you're getting checkmated, you have to do something else. So here we have bishop captures on e4, eliminating a very strong attacker. Most of the Maxime's pieces are on are on light squares, so the only piece on dark square that is available to is this knight. So why not pick it up? Bishop to f4, opening up a discovery from the queen. We have king to g8, and now queen captures on e5. Again, offering to transfer the game into the endgame, but Maxime again declines it with bishop to d5. Now it's a game of opposite colored bishops, and Maxime likes his chances. As usual, in a game of opposite colored bishops, the side attacking, it's like that side is up a piece, since the other bishop is unable to oppose the other colored bishop. And also there's the threat of queen captures on b2, which Radjabov defends with rook to e2. And here, the time situation on the clocks, Maxime had 40 minutes and Radjabov had some 16 minutes. So Radjabov definitely better, but time is ticking away. We have rook to f5 by Maxime, kicking away Radjabov's queen, queen to e3, and now queen to e8. This queen is now coming either to g6 or to h5, and then Maxime wants to bring the other rook over to f8 to really put pressure on Radjabov's king side now. With f3 blocking this bishop, and also if the position allows it, for example, if queen comes over here, you could maybe play g4, not right away, since the queen can always move back to g6 and pin the g pawn, but it is a very useful move, but mostly to prevent this bishop from eyeing the g2 pawn. And here we have queen to g6, now getting the queen into the game, preparing rook a to f8. And here everyone was expecting bishop to g3. It's a very natural move. It prevents any threats along the g file. The f pawn is better protected. For example, if this sacrifice occurs, bishop captures on f3, then even the g pawn can capture as the bishop is blocking it. But Teimour found an even more interesting move, h4. He wants to create a barrier along the g file with bishop to g5, so grabbing even more space. But okay, rook a to f8, going after the bishop, bishop to g5 now, just defending there, and now a6. Now Maxime is out of, active moves. He just has to wait and see what Radjabov will do. Now rook a to d1, finally bringing this rook into the game, and then now we're going to see a very nice rook lift, or maybe even two, with rook to d4 followed by rook to g4. And here, as Maxime knows this rook is now coming to g4, he retreats with the queen right away. We have queen to e8. If you leave the queen there and you allow the rook to come to g4, then some very nasty threats like bishop to h6 could be an option. So queen back to e8, and now rook to d4. There is nothing wrong with this. Black doesn't really have any active moves. And then now queen to c6. Again, putting some pressure on the king's side, still keeping an option of maybe sacrificing this bishop on f3. We have rook to g4 as planned, and now Maxime, there was the option here of going e5. It is possible, and then go e4 to try and bust open Radjabov's king side a bit. But we should also show what happens if bishop captures on f3 right away. It seems very interesting because after g captures and rook captures, you are now threatening, after the queen moves, rook to f1 check, and if this queen can come to h1, it's going to be excellent for black. The problem is white has queen captures on e6 with check, which forces a queen trade, and then you are just down a piece, and you don't have a good continuation. Rook f1 check, king h2, rook f2 check, rook blocks, you survive everything, and you are just up a piece. So here Maxime decided he's going to wait with king to h7. This now allows the line we've shown, as queen captures on e6 will no longer come with check. But now Radjabov just prevents it. Bishop to f4. And it's an excellent move. Now it shuts down both of the rooks along the f file. So now, sorry, not that. Any bishop captures on f3 action is no longer possible. And here the situation on the clock is 5 minutes for Radjabov and 25 minutes for Maxime, and it's move 35. They still have to make 5 more moves to reach time control. We have rook 8 to f7 by Maxime, defending that g7 pawn, as it's bound to become a target with something like bishop to e5, queen to d4, and going after the g7 pawn. So bishop to e5 now, the threat, the threat is no longer here, but you will either play queen to d4 to enforce the attack along this diagonal, or you're going to go queen to f2, followed by queen to g3, and then put pressure on the g7 pawn. We have b5 by Maxime, expanding on the queen side, but it's, again, a waiting move. There is no active way to play this position with black. And now queen to f2. Radjabov prefers this idea with queen to g3 rather than queen to d4. Both ideas come with a triple attack towards the g7 pawn. The point is, if you play queen to f2 and g3, you will also have better support when you decide to advance your h pawn, and also you keep an eye on your king side. If queen leaves, then maybe some more ideas are possible, and Radjabov is very low on time. So queen to d7, preparing to defend the g7 pawn. Now comes queen to g3, and here rook to h5, just waiting to see what Radjabov does. And here Radjabov with 2 minutes on the clock. He plays bishop back to d4. Now he makes room for the rook to come to e5. With queen back to c7, now offering a queen trade. Radjabov now really has to decide what to do, and he plays rook to e5. And when he played rook to e5, he had 3 seconds on the clock, and with rook to e5 he reaches time control. He gains an additional 30 minutes. So here he can finally relax in a better position, which is huge. We have rook h to f5, bringing the rook back, and now Radjabov could decide to start pushing the h pawn, but he decides for rook to g5 first. And here there are so many threats. For example, if you capture, then maybe if this pawn recaptures, then the bishop becomes weak. If you capture and the rook captures, then the bishop and queen eyeing the g7 pawn could become a very dangerous tactic. So here Maxime is without a move. He plays king to g8, he just waits, and now Radjabov starts with pushing of the h pawn. With h5, h6 is coming, so Maxime has to play something. He decides to trade a pair of rooks here. We have rook captures on g5, queen captures on g5, and now queen to e7, again offering a queen trade, but Radjabov just declines. He plays queen to g4. Again, h6 still remains as a threat, and it's very hard to find a useful idea here. So here Maxime played rook to f5. He offered a trade of rooks, but it doesn't work for a very specific reason, which I'm sure you will see. Just in case, feel free to pause the video and try to find the absolute best winning move for Teimour in this position while I give you a couple of seconds. For those of you who were able to do it, and I'm sure everyone was able to do it, so congratulations to everyone. We're not going to even mention those that just enjoyed the show. The move, of course, is queen captures on f5. It's just there. Maxime couldn't hold on. It was too much pressure, and he just decided to go with the easy way out. So, of course, it was in this position that Maxime Vachier Lagrave resigned the game, as there is nothing more to do. You just lost a very valuable rook, and if you capture it, then rook captures on e7, and you are just in an endgame where you are up a whole rook, completely winning. There's no point in playing this out. So yeah, after queen captures on f5, Maxime resigned, and with this, his chances of going into the candidates are, very low, as I understand. He can either qualify through ratings, maybe, because even if, for example, this is how it works. If Ding beats if Ding beats Yuangi in the semifinals, then Ding is qualified by achieving top 2 places in the World Cup, and he doesn't have to qualify by ratings. Then someone else can qualify by ratings. So it will either be most likely Giri, but maybe even Maxime Vachier Lagrave. It's I don't think anyone calculated it yet, because it's not who is higher rated now. It's the average across the previous 12 months. So that's how you qualify through rating to the candidates tournament. But most likely, as I understand it, it will be Giri. But there is one more way for Maxime to qualify, even if not through ratings and not by qualifying through the World Cup, is by waiting for Ding to finish his game with Yuangyi and then play for the third place, either against Ding, which will be, against Ding or against Yuangyi, it will be extremely hard. But if you win third place in the FIDE World Cup, you don't qualify to the candidates, but you are sort of considered more as a wild card for the candidates. That's at this moment, I believe that is the best Maxime has. So Teimour Radjabov, the first one to qualify for the candidates tournament 2020 through the FIDE World Cup. Very exciting, as the last time he played there was in 2013 in the famous candidates tournament that Magnus Carlsen won. But he also played in the candidates tournament in 2012, so this will be his third candidates tournament. And with this win over Maxime, Vachier, Lagrave, Teimour Radjabov joins the world top 10 rating-wise. So very exciting times for chess and for Teimour Radjabov, who was sort of dormant for the past 5 or 6 years. But yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. Now, for those of you who were waiting for Ding versus Yuangyi, both of the classical games ended in a draw, and I really didn't feel like showing them. They were just really boring draws. I have to put it that way, because they were, of course not for those who play it, but I just don't think it would be exciting for you guys to watch those games, but you're welcome to check them out on your own. Just, go through the moves. They were very short draws. But yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank George Devore, Reza Sarkamari, Once Upon a Gambit, Barry McMurdoch, and Luna Escobar, who says that she loves Rasmus Mortensen really a lot. So thank you a lot for your contribution to my channel. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the FIDE World Cup, checking up on your wonderful suggestions and so on. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.